Okay, thanks everyone for joining today. I just clicked the record button, so we'll get started on the inaugural PGB meeting for 2021. Slightly delayed. We had the regular calendar recurring invite appeared to not go forward into the new year. So and I wanted to make sure I gave everyone adequate time to make sure they could try to attend. So one thing of note, so you'll notice I started recording the meeting. These meetings are all, as you know, public and on the public record. However, we've been, a little bit lackadaisical sometimes about doing the recordings. We're going to be changing that up, and we're going to be trying to change it up for all the work groups as well. So we're actually going to take a concerted effort not only to record the meetings, always record the meetings, but we're actually going to start putting them on our YouTube channel, the OCA YouTube channel, in an effort to, try to engage more folks in what's happening. I came to that realization after participating in a couple of other open working groups over the recent months who do post all of their meetings on YouTube channels. I find it greatly increases accessibility and ability for the community to understand what's going on. So unless the PGB is discussing something in executive session, which we can elect to do, I think we're going to go forward starting to publish these things on YouTube. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about that? Thoughts? Feedback?
So this is Duncan. I like the idea. I know some other groups always question the whole privacy stuff. I'm fine with doing it, so I'm not objecting. I'm just asking to make sure you've dotted I's and crossed T's on whatever we have to do that.
Yeah, I can. So Jory's here. She might be able to give some input, but from my understanding and reading through all the rules, the agenda and the decisions of the PGB are supposed to be public record. So, we really shouldn't be doing anything. The only reason that I leave the option open to executive session would be, if we're discussing something around, that we feel might be sent, if we want to try to define a strategy of engagement with another group or something like that. We could do that and try to leave that out of the recording, I think. But in general, everything's supposed to be. That's right, Jory? Or
yeah, that's absolutely correct. There's no reason whatsoever that you couldn't share these recordings or invite people to watch along on YouTube, for example. We have a lot of other open projects that are publishing, I should say the baseline community in particular is publishing all of their meetings. And we find that the benefits definitely outweigh concerns because, as Jason mentioned, if you were to approach a topic that you felt for whatever reason might be difficult, or you would any member of the committee would prefer the opportunity to speak freely in a private session, you could do that, but we do require the records of these meetings and decisions taken to be public, so the recordings can be as well.
That works for me. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other comments, questions on that before I jump into the other agenda items? Okay. I did want to take a couple of minutes on this call very briefly just to introduce, as we have a couple of new PGB members here today. I just wanted to give them a couple of minutes to introduce themselves. So I'll start with, I'll just go in alphabetical order. So we have Chris Murphy here from TrueStar, who I had the privilege of meeting earlier this week. Chris, did you want to just give a quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Chris Murphy. I am the CTO at TrueStar. If you're not familiar with TrueStar, we're a data-centric cyber intelligence platform for basically automating threat intelligence. My history in cybersecurity comes from a big stint at Alien Vault, where I helped build USM Anywhere, helped them through the acquisition with AT&T and that kind of stuff. super happy to be here and meet everybody.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Chris. And, you know, I'm really excited that you guys have joined the OCA. I'm sure you'll be a great asset just based on our earlier conversations. Very excited.
Thank you.
And now the other new member here at the PGB this week, although you know, a lot of folks may have engaged with him in some other forums, would be Mark Mastrangeli. So I'll hand it to Mark here, just to introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Hi, everybody. Mark Mastrangeli. Super excited to be on the PGB and work with you all. I'm the lead architect at McAfee for what's called the Security Innovation Alliance. So in that role, I kind of liaise between our products across the portfolio and over 140 partners that we have in our ecosystem to develop integrations between their things and McAfee things, and you know, try to deliver to our customers, you know, a complete integrated architecture. Been working with OpenDXL for many years since that came about when we were part of Intel Security Group. In total, been at McAfee 12 years, 6 of those years at Intel, where I left McAfee and was part of the Internet of Things group, and got to be the security lead for Intel Software Defined Industrial Systems program. Yeah, lots of different things in those years, but happy to be here and collaborate.
Thanks a lot, Mark. And I'll just chime in quickly as well. You know, I know Mark for quite a while now. And Mark was actually instrumental in getting this whole organization off the ground. So I just wanted to give people that background as well. So thanks a lot, Mark, and welcome to your new role as the McAfee rep on the PGB.
Mark, quick question.
Sorry, was there a question?
Yeah, just a quick question for Mark. Do you mind sending me your GitHub user name at your convenience? Thank you.
Yep, will do. Thanks.
Okay, so before we move on to the next agenda item, which is I'm hoping that Forrest Hare can spend a few minutes discussing, you know, introducing a conversation we've been having around IACD and some things going on there. I realized I forgot one agenda item, so just briefly. Actually, Forrest isn't on the call today, is he? Or is Forrest the 719 number? Is that
That's
you?
me.
Okay, perfect.
That's me.
Okay, so just before I hand it to you, Forrest, I just wanted, I realized that I forgot one agenda item, very important agenda item. That's the co-chair role. So as we notified, you know, earlier this month, unfortunately, Darren had to leave McAfee, which is, you know, partially why Mark is here now. And as a result, you know, the co-chair role of the PGB is vacant. That is an elected position, open for nominations by any PGB member. And I did send out the call a couple of times to the mailing list looking for nominations. We only had one person nominate themselves, actually, and that was Mark Mastrangeli. So I just wanted to one final time call out here on the meeting, if there's anybody else who, you know, would like to nominate themselves or would like to nominate another individual for the role of co-chair, you have that opportunity now, and we will then be opening a ballot. So it's an elected position, so we have to open a ballot because I do not believe we have enough quorum here on the call today. So we'll be opening an electronic ballot for that, and everybody has to vote to either vote for the PGB member if there's another person presented right now, or vote to confirm Mark, who is the only nominee thus far. So I'll open the floor for any other nominations for co-chair of the OCA. Is anybody not?
I'm not volunteering or nominating anyone, but just a question. Is the Mark that was nominated on this call?
Yes, sorry. I'll make that perfectly clear, Duncan. So it was Mark Mastrangeli from McAfee, who just introduced himself.
Great. I thought that, but I wasn't 100. I want to make sure there weren't 2 Marks. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Duncan. Yeah, so Mark was nominated. So I'm opening the floor now for any other nominations for the co-chair role. Okay. So it sounds like that there aren't any. I'll leave the call, just in case people didn't receive the email. I'll leave the call open for everyone just until the end of the week, right? So end of day tomorrow, so you can think about it in your organizations. End of day tomorrow, I will open the ballot for the co-chair role, and we'll leave it open for a week or so. Okay. So with that, I'll hand that open to Forrest Hare to just kick off and open a discussion around a thread that we've been having around IACD. Forrest?
Sure, thanks, Jason. And as it was mentioned, I'll be kicking off a discussion. I'm not bringing any solutions necessarily, but potential, options we'll talk about out there. And Stephen Woods, and I apologize, I'm not on the WebEx screen, so I don't know who was on the call, but it's Stephen Woods on the call, and Mike Herring. Is Mike on the call by chance?
Stephen is here. I do not see Mike.
Okay. So for those of you who, to get everybody up to speed where we are in the movie, IACD is sunsetting, as Mike just mentioned or notified us last week. It's officially sunsetting on like the 1st of March, I think. And for those who are not familiar, IACD is Integrated Automated Control. I forgot what the D stands for, detection maybe. So their goal wasn't primarily for open standards. It was finding ways to automate responses quicker, so we can speed up response and get inside the OODA loop of the malicious actors. But of course, it was all being done from an open standards perspective, right? I mean, it was NSA working with Johns Hopkins and academia to try to figure out how we could come up with common efforts towards automated controls. And so, one of the big things that came out of that was OpenC2. Which is out and about now. And so what does sunsetting mean? As was made pretty clear to us by Mike and the NSA team, sunsetting means it is officially going to be finished with no specific intention of somebody picking it up and running with it. They feel like their objectives have been met, and so in that their objectives have been met, that means that they didn't have an intent to bestow or bless or request or nominate any other type of forum specifically to pick up where they left off. So the Johns Hopkins APL Harley Parks, I believe, was the POC over there. And so without the NSA sponsorship, they then don't have a specific mandate to be running with it as well, and we probably need to circle back with them to see if anything has changed since the last time we talked to Harley. But I got the impression from talking with him last time is that JHU-APL did not have an intent to go it alone, if you will, or to try to take a more of a leadership role and then reach out to somebody else like us to see if we wanted to then partner with them to keep moving the initiatives forward. So that leaves us with what type of official position would we be in to assume, the mantle if we were to assume that there is a mantle to assume from an IACD perspective. And this is where I'll kind of turn it open to questions and discussions, but I'll leave it with what I responded back to the email trail of who else on the email discussion that we had previously was, it seems like what he's kind of done is left us an opportunity with Michael and NSA have done a list of opportunity to unilaterally say, okay, we're going to take it from here without, having to worry about any competition from anybody if we just become, the first movers on it. So what does it mean to take it from here as well? We could, assume further development of OpenC2 or anything else that was basically under the playbooks and the other things that they were doing under that initiative. If you wanted to see, if you're not familiar, you can go to their website. I think it's IACD.org, and you can see the different products and things that they had produced. So if we want to refine those things, if we want to, do version 2 and stuff like that, we could basically take it upon ourselves if we want to say we want to assume, IACD's, their goals and keep them going from here. So it would be up to us. If we don't do it, it means that it just kind of, they say, okay, that's done, and then industry just do whatever you want. So it's kind of up to us how we would want to take it from here on the IACD front. Hopefully that was fairly clear. In fact, I didn't actually write that down in nice bullet points to articulate to everybody. So we'll leave it up to open discussion, and I've got about 10 minutes left before I have to jump to another call, but I'd be happy to participate until then.
And just before anybody else jumps in, Stephen, I don't know if you wanted to weigh in as well, because I saw that you had a very interesting comment and potential thought stream around this strategy-wise. Do you want to?
Yeah, I did. Okay, so a couple of data points. One, if you're not familiar with IACD, they have a vision that's very much overlapped with ours, but a little further along in terms of their exploration of it. So there's a lot of alignment with what we're thinking. The second data point is they also have community forums that monitor their progress, and they're an outlet for them to talk to the world. It would be possible for us to drop into those organizations and saying, imagine us saying a message back to the world saying, thank you, IACD, we'll take it from here. We support the vision. We congratulate you on the work that you've done. And now we invite the world to come and talk to us about this as we progress with our approach to it. And to that extent, we are going to be sponsoring a couple of informational meetings where we'll tell you how we have envisioned this progression, what projects we are doing now, where there are opportunities that we foresee for you to participate and add to the puzzle. Now, by doing that, we would have the potential of drawing in additional people into the organization and getting additional staffing into the projects that we've got underway. And so that was a thought we were investigating.
Yeah, Steve, probably thanks for making that point. I did not make that clear. It's not just IACD was not just NSA and JHU working in partnership. They had a whole community. They had a series of conferences on a yearly basis. So there was a whole community that we could potentially tap into like that. That's a very good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Stephen.
This is Duncan. If I could chime in, I'm in support of continuing the IACD effort. I think this would be a good place for it. I think from a wording viewpoint, just like all said and done, that work is what spawned the OpenC2 work that I now chair as an OASIS TC. And the way it sort of happened was first it was a forum, and then it was, hey, we moved it into OASIS. So I would word it as the IACD work is now moving into OASIS, and this is its home. Would be how I would word it, and that I think would go over well. But I would then, if you're proposing to do that, recognize that you would be adopting the entire IACD, not just the parts that happen to align with what this group has already sort of, fixed as its components. Because there are other mechanisms to do IACD other than the particular, we're trying to sort of pick a single way to do things so we don't have all this confusion. The IACD does have some alternatives in it that we would have to then, if we make IACD a OCA project, I think it would open the door more to more people, which is a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing in that we get more people, but it does mean, for example, you don't have to use OpenDXL, maybe use a different message fabric, or we get more into the action side, not just the threat intel side. So I think it's a good thing. I really think the sort of core concepts of IACD need to be somewhere, the sort of modularity, the vendor agnostic, et cetera stuff. just recognize it is wider than just the piece this group has focused on to date. Over.
Well, but Duncan, I think we have an opportunity here to shape it however we want, probably because it seemed pretty clear from NSA's perspective, they don't want anyone to just pick up ICD and keep running with ICD as it was structured. I think we would have to, it's going to say IACD is done. Now we have something else. So I think we would have the opportunity, if we want to model it just like IACD, we could, but I don't think we could even keep that term as a thing, because NSA wants to, I think, end that thing.
So NSA and DHS had contracts with JHU-APL that had certain things, but the IACD community was wider than that. And yes, they funded most of it. And yes, they ran most of it. And yes, most of the vendors trying to obviously get the DoD dollars followed what they said. But did they trademark it? Are you saying we can't use those terms? And if so, if they're sunsetting it, we should even request that for. I'm not positive we couldn't use those words, but my point is still the same. And that's true. If we choose to say we choose to implement the concepts of IACD in OCA, and as such, we're going to add X, Y, and Z to it, and adding X, Y, and Z sucks in 6 more people to join us. That'd be great.
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts, right? I think so. In turn, you raise a good point, Duncan, around the marks, and that was, this was one of my questions, and it's completely unclear to me. When you look through the IACD materials and who has the copyright tag affiliated with it, I'm pretty sure that the marks are all actually owned by JHU. I don't think it's NSA. So we would need to coordinate and organize that with JHU and talk with Harley about how that would work. If we wanted to, basically bring the organization's materials into OCA. Now, I think this is a very good and important discussion, right? Because I see this whole thing in 2 different ways. On one side, it's an opportunity for the OCA, an opportunity both for us to do some good, because there's a lot of very good work here, and sunsetting an existing community is always difficult. So having a way to help the community would be good. It also has an opportunity to bring OCA visibility to a whole slew of people who aren't involved thus far. On the other side, there's a lot of, I'll say, risk and unknown around how this should work. I worry about the idea of bringing on a projects without clear owners, right? So if we bring in, what does it mean if we invite in IACD into OCA? Like, what are we doing? Because we would need some OCA members who are very invested in the IACD work, who are going to steward that and help organize and drive it forward. Otherwise, we're not really going to be doing anything, right? So that's the part that I think we really need to unpack, is who in OCA is going to be supporting this, because we don't have there's no free resources here, right? So that's just my thoughts on it.
Okay, so let me add to that a little bit. Okay, so imagine you bring in the whole IACD plant into the organization. Okay, if that does not, so you've got this community out there. They're invited to come participate. Worst case, they don't. Okay, so we have now inherited IACD, but we prune the plant back to the parts that are core to our business, and so we've inherited the mantle of IACD, but it's been trimmed back to the part that we care about most and are promoting most aggressively. If, however, other people do come in with the plant and they want to build parts of it, then that's something we should entertain as a board and say, do we have new projects that we need to be adding here with the appropriate staff to man them? you know, anything that we can't man dies, and we trim it off.
I'd agree with the, so is that, do you think that this is a conversation? I think we're going to have to start to table this conversation and move on to some other things in the agenda, because we've got a bunch of stuff to cover here today. But is the next step here, Forrest and Stephen, do you think we have to have a conversation with Harley? Is that the step that to try to discuss this in more detail, or do you think we need to figure out first what we want to discuss with Harley?
I think it would make sense.
I think guys,
Sorry,
I have
go
to
ahead,
drop, so let
Forrest.
me just jump in quick. I think it would probably be good to get more information from Harley and their plans, and maybe also from DHS, because Duncan mentioned that it's a three-way team, so we should probably get their perspectives for us to figure out where to go. So I have to drop. Thanks,
Forrest.
Last comment on that one. I think we should go talk to them, but we should go with the trial balloon and say, you know, this is how we could possibly do it, and see how they react to it. Are they open to letting us have access to the marks? Do they have any particular objections? You know, let's see those ahead of time and then decide what we want to do in fact.
Okay, so let me propose this. So I'm going to set up a call next week, and we'll try to strategize next steps, just like a 15 minute call, 15 to 30 minutes. So is there anyone here besides, oh, I just saw someone put in the chat. I was just going to ask, is there anyone besides Forrest and Stephen who want to be on that call?
Duncan.
Anybody else?
I'm happy to support it if I can, but I wouldn't block on my participation.
Okay, thanks, Adam.
Yeah, likewise. This is Mark.
Okay, I'll send in an invite to all of you. And try to coordinate a time really quickly for next week, as early as possible, just so we can finalize what we want to do here. Okay, moving on. Next agenda item. Russ, would you be able to give an update on the white paper and architecture working groups?
Yeah, certainly, JK. I could do that. So the white paper, again, what we're talking about there, that was the overall OCA white paper, which talked about the projects and our objectives and, you know, what we are as far as OCA is concerned. That I finished that up the end of December, turned it over to marketing to do some formatting. Ansel converted it into a data sheet, which now is in review with marketing. And Kathy thinks it should be a briefing. So we have a little bit of discussion at the marketing meeting later today of what exactly are we producing. Is it a solution brief, a data sheet, or is it a white paper? And then the next question would be, do we need more than one form of the document we wrote? You know, to figure that out as well. I guess we'll discuss that in the marketing group. But other than that, it's just in edit mode and format mode, and then we'll go into, you know, get it out there. And again, we'll talk at the marketing team later today. They have a call too to kind of figure out where we go next with that stuff. So that's the white paper.
Could you give us links to what it is and sort of at least run it by us if we don't intimately follow the marketing group day-to-day discussions on something you're going to put out? Can you at least sort of send it by and say, hey, here it is. Anybody got any comments or whatever?
Yeah, I'll send you the hold on, I'll put it in the chat. You've seen an earlier version of it when I had it as a paper before, but they've since massaged it. So there's your link. It's in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay. And it's under final edits over there. There's a lot of it formatting. The content is pretty much subsetted of what I gave them, which you've all seen. But again, they got to put it in the right formats, and some of that means shortening it a bit. So we will talk about whether or not we need multiple instances of it, because obviously a data sheet or a solution brief is going to be a lot shorter than the paper we wrote, which has a lot more information on it. So question of is that a value, and if it isn't, fine. If it is, what do we do with that set of information? Okay. All right, so let me switch over to the architecture work group. We had our first meeting last Thursday. It's scheduled again bi-weekly. We did talk about the cadence for 2021, and it'll pretty much be the two major items are continuing to work the diagrams, the good old C4 diagrams that Adam and Bill and crew know and love. And the idea there is to, they started with SCAP and they've been moving out further through the scope of our initial draft architecture. I think they had threat intelligence in there on the last round, but the idea here is we want to continue to iterate on that, which we will every meeting. So what we've been doing as a process is the team has been putting together a next rev. We review that rev and talk about it at the meetings, and then we improve it and merge the branch in. And then we talked about that process on previous meetings, so that's when we're following. So a new branch comes in, we review it and then update it. So it will continue to get more diagrams and more details on diagram. A lot of great work is done on documentation, a lot more words around the arrows. Terminology documents been spawned and put out on the GitHub. For those of you that love terminology and working with it, there's stuff out there now to use and work with and add to. And they're calling for help. The team has been calling for help. I did post out on the architecture minutes, and for those that you don't go to the meetings, we do post every architecture group meeting, both in terms of the actual voices. So we do have recordings of the webinar as well as minutes. Please go out and look at them. We are looking for a call for help, so you'll see that out there. There's places where we could use some help and some expertise by the teams to expand the knowledge base of the folks that are working on it. So we welcome folks' input on that. So our cadence one will be continuing to evolve those diagrams. What we talked about at the meeting last week is the overall idea of having an end-to-end use case, which will use Doug Austin's help. He's been helping us with use cases. And what we want to do is go from endpoint right through to the SIMSOAR threat management applications and be able to diagram all that and pull together all of our projects. And end result being, we have an architecture that lays out where does SCAP fit in and how does STIX Shifter fit in and how, where does the OpenDXL come in and how, and then the subsequent related projects like OpenC2 and OpenDXL and STIX itself. We want to lay all those out so people can see an end-to-end view of how this will fit together, how we're using the existing technologies I just named, as well as the OCA ones that are our projects. And so that's the idea, is to kind of lay out a strategy that describes that, shows that, and enables us to eventually, hopefully, have some kind of proof of concept of the whole OCA architecture and how it move forward. And therefore, with that proof of concept, prove out the value of what we're doing and the difference of what we're doing versus what today is. So let me stop there for a second and see if there's any comments.
Just one, and it relates to sort of combining the last two topics. This is Duncan again. The concept of the IACD architecture has come up in the OCA architecture committee discussions, and that, I believe, in fact, it's a color coding on one of the diagrams and everything. Yep. I believe that is a useful construct. So the group that is looking at sort of what to capture from IACD, if we do nothing else, sort of capturing still that architectural concept they had, I think would be useful. And I would recommend we stick with that. And that could maybe be the base we sort of start from as far as saying, what we're inheriting from them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
I don't have any comment other than, I'm super excited to get this work over the finish line.
Yeah, and we all. So that's first iteration. The second iteration is the architecture paper, and I've started. I did get some feedback. I'm on revision 2 now, which will be posted probably the end of this week. So keep an eye on that as well. I do send that out when I do have it ready to the architecture work group email list. So people that are following that will see us progressing there. And the idea there is I got some great comments from folks. As a matter of fact, I did a draft this morning for some of the sections, and those that have commented, I've started sending information back to make sure I caught their comments and getting their input on what they see as that needs improvement. And so I'll iterate on that throughout the work group. So we'll have those two main themes: iterating on diagrams, iterating on the next version of the work paper, of the paper. And my motivation there, I think, is to try and get that paper to some semblance of a first draft that's kind of complete. And given the resources we've got on it, it looks like my projection is, hopefully we can get that done by June. If I get more resources, we can go faster, but that's kind of, given the resources I've seen on this thing, that's probably how long it's going to take us. But we'll see what we can do better. But that's what my outlook is. Okay, and that's kind of it from the architecture side.
Thanks, Russ. Any thoughts, comments on the yes, no? Okay. I mean, yeah, I think all of this is incredibly important work. You know, to me, I think some of the work that we've undertaken in this whole architecture area has the potential to really hammer home some of the value of us all collaborating, working together across the industry here. Perhaps even more so than some of the projects or source code projects. So I'm very excited about it. Okay, next agenda item is I had some folks request that we start updating on projects during the PGB calls. So I'm going to take here. Let me share my screen. Let's see here. And I'm going to take this month. We'll go over the STIX Shifter project and its statistics. And you know, I'll field any questions anyone has there while I'm doing that. Sorry, just a sec. I'm just switch windows here. There we go. Can everyone see my web browser, I assume?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, so just quickly, by the way, you know, for anyone who doesn't know, GitHub has a whole plethora of statistics and insights that people can browse at any time related to their projects. It's over here in the Insights tab. And you can view things like, you know, how many seen, what's the latest, you know, number of commits that we've had, who are the most active contributors, and what do they contribute. You know, so you can actually see, you know, you can see, well, look, Danny's the most active contributor in this project, followed by Azam, and they're kind of doing it continuously. But then you can almost see when certain people joined up to the project because it's very empty, spikes up. So I find all the statistics very interesting. In general, you know, we're making good progress. We're up to, I believe, 17 different connectors. So you can count through them here. The number of connectors that the project can support and connect to do the bidirectional STIX translation. Obviously, still a long way to go to cover everything that's required in the industry, but we're making good progress. Another important leading indicator for the project is there's starting to be a significant number of contributions coming in from outside the core team. So we're getting contributions coming into STIX Shifter from other parts of IBM that are not actually in IBM security. You know, I know to some folks here on the call, you know, that might not be as interesting to you, thinking, well, it's all IBM, but, you know, just telling you the way IBM works, you know, the fact that there are other IBMers outside of our team contributing is significant. Because they're not under our direction, not under our control. So that's happening. You know, we've also been having some good conversations with different groups around, you know, uptake and how they can use this. So the knowledge of the project is starting to grow. You know, we had a great proof of concept came out of an OCA member Sidearm in December, where they started building a POC of a web application that they're trying to use to basically wrap a UI around STIX Shifter and do the translation to and from there. That was very interesting. And, you know, I have a lot of optimism over the first half of this year that we're actually going to start to see more and more uptake of this project, which is great because that's what leads to the network effect. The network effect of this is when consuming it in their applications and in their day-to-day so that they'll come in and build more connectors, which will lead to more consumption, et cetera, et cetera. The value of the project really hinges on getting to that critical inflection point of that network effect taking off. So that's my brief update on STIX Shifter. I'll open the floor. You know, does anyone have any questions on the project? Like, what are we doing? What's the roadmap? You know, thoughts, concerns, questions?
How is the governance process working? It's sort of the trial run of the, you know, the TSC and the lead and the,
Yeah.
And since you are now getting, I mean, the network effect, I agree, hasn't totally taken off yet, but at least it's beginning. You got some outsiders in there now. How is that working? Any feedback we need to hear?
Great question, Duncan. So there is an agenda top. The next, I'm not sure. I don't have the agenda in front of me because I'm sharing my screen. But there's a topic on the agenda coming up around the TSC that, you know, I was going to ask Mark to chime in. But this is one of the aspects that we need to talk about. So the governance, you know, I'll just quickly cover it here, and we can go into a little bit more detail after. The governance process is something that's underway. The issue, I believe, is that it's not widely known what's going on, which means it's not a very good governance process. So they have this change control board call that they're doing literally every week around what should go in, what should go out. The issue is, you know, I gave this feedback to that team just this week. I said, folks, this needs to be public. It actually needs to be in the OCA calendar because it's not. So those changes are underway. And this is one of the things that, you know, I want to open the discussion here with Mark on the TSC is how, you know, one of the things that I'm trying to do, you know, starting in 2021, and it ties into this whole YouTube thing. You know, this organization needs to be a lot more and open and start publishing everything that's going on. Because in order to build a community, we've got to get all of the conversations out into the open. And you know, I'm going to be pushing very, very hard on that. Does that help, Duncan, answer your question? And
it does. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure we take it into account because those last few sentences you made are very appropriate. So yes.
Perfect. Any other questions on STIX Shifter before we move forward? All right, great. And you know, I think we can cover the ontology project in next month's call, and we can try to cycle these around as we go forward. Okay, next item on the agenda is the work stream. So, you know, that was a perfect segue, right? The TSC work stream. So Mark, you know, I wanted to give you the opportunity because I know that you have some thoughts in this area. So I gave you some space in the agenda to you know, share them with the rest of the group here.
Sure. So, you know, I think I'm still trying to get my arms around it. You know, my approach so far is, you know, really trying to push for McAfee to adopt these things and you know, the work that's been going on. You know, I think that we've got to make it real and usable. I'm looking for a lab that we can use that potentially I can get paid for, that's got all of the right architecture and security and all of that stuff in place that we don't have to worry about. And I think that creating a playground where we can build this stuff and make it real will be critical to, you know, the TSC's success overall and moving these things forward. So that's my focus at the moment. I think the ontology project, I'm working on getting some additional resources internally on my side that can help do some of that work and, you know, keep creating things that we can publish and put out there to bring it together.
And yeah, I take your point, Duncan, and you know, I trust me, I take this very much to heart. I take it very seriously. So I'm pushing as hard as I can to make progress as fast as I can. In opening everything up and making it extremely transparent. And and by the way, you know, I'll just put it out there. I think there's, you know, as we have in a lot of different aspects here, you know, there is a need for, you know, there's always ability for help, right? In terms of, you know, helping, you know, just the management of governance itself on areas like the TSC and whatnot. So, you know, that's why, you know, we did bring Mark in even before he came onto the PGB, was because, you know, he was going to help out with these aspects, right? So, you know, I'm very much looking forward to this, you know, because I mean, it is a challenge. It's a challenge for all of us, all of our companies right now, you know, and I think everybody's stretched. So in terms of resources.
And this is Duncan with just a suggestion that I think, I mean, all said and done, STIX Shifter is a much more established project than either OpenDXL ontology or SCAP v2 prototype. So it sort of got a way that it works, that we sort of have to, like you said, open it up and be more transparent. But I have no issue with however they do stuff. Just keep doing it that way. Just make it transparent. So issues like, you know, it now has a contributing section on the page, which is great, but it doesn't mention the governance process at all. It doesn't mention there's a TSC and there's a lead, whatever. I don't even remember the name of the person we call, who's the person who can approve pull requests and stuff. But that sort of stuff, just documenting it so it's less intimidating to outsiders to go ahead and, you know, put their toe in the water would be good.
Yeah, I fully agree. Yeah. And yeah, I'm pushing hard on that internally. You know, I can just tell you I have an internal session with the team next week on this, so we'll be making some progress there.
So one comment, I don't know, maybe put it somewhere else in the agenda or a follow-up meeting, but and I'm obviously learning, but you know, we've brought up in conversation changing the name of the OpenDXL ontology and making it some other open ontology. You know, really like not being so focused on OpenDXL, recognizing that, you know, there might be lots of different communication methods, and, you know, maybe it's Kafka, maybe it's messaging, maybe it's APIs, or all of the above, and giving the ontology project the opportunity to advance more quickly and opening it up to different use cases.
Yeah, and I think that's an idea we should definitely explore. I mean, I think it's something we're gonna have to think hard about, just because of, you know, there's a bunch of logistics and ramifications here. But if we are thinking about that, now is the time to do it before we build too much. I think it might be a very good idea based on some of the, you know, some of the other conversations, and just from a, you know, just even actually speaking from an OCA recruitment perspective. You know, sometimes when you're engaging with other entities, like the idea that it appears that you're tied to this very specific technology can be off-putting.
Right.
Simply, it's easier to say. The problem when you have two things, OpenDXL and OpenDXL ontology, you tend to abbreviate, particularly if you're in ontology a lot, and it's better to call it ontology, but a lot of people just call it OpenDXL, and then it gets really confusing.
Yeah, and I think, you know, let's just table this cover. I think this, but let's try to table it. Maybe take it to the mailing list or something to discuss, because
Okay.
I think we should discuss
Good
it.
idea.
Yeah, let's discuss this on the mailing list. So one final thing to wrap up. So Duncan mentioned the SCAP v2 prototype. So I wanted to give an update on the PGB and what's happening. So we had a bit of a slowdown during the holiday period in getting some of the logistics in place around that. But I am very pleased and excited to share. Here, let me share my screen again very quickly. That as of this morning, we finally got some of those logistics sorted out. So if you guys can see my screen here, the SCAP v2 prototype project now has, you know, it has the GitHub, it has a proper README explaining what the project is, how to install it, how to deploy it. And Dave Lemaire's put a bunch of work into this. So first of all, thank you to him for thank you for him for being patient as we sorted out. There was logistics around ECLAs and a bunch of other things I won't get into. But we now have the project here. What's the next step? There's a couple of next steps. First, Stephen Bangert and myself and Jessica Fitzgerald have been discussing, how do we engage the SCAP V2 community. There's a discussion around, Stephen was going to draft up an introductory email to this project and the OCA and send it to the community. It hasn't happened yet. We were kind of waiting for this because we didn't want to have a whole bunch of people come over here when the project didn't even have a README. So now that we have this in place, we can finally do some of these other items that we've been waiting for. There is a little bit of a resourcing issue around this project in that, Dave is working on it. And I believe he's trying to source some help to assist him on that. But the funding, the actual funding that was being directed at this dried up in Q4 last year. So there is going to be, a strong push with the SCAP community to say, if you're interested in this standard and proving that it works in these specific use cases, please come and assist, because there are the companies that have a vested interest in SCAP obviously should have a vested interest in doing that, right? So that's what we're going to be working towards over the next little while, is trying to do that recruitment and engagement around contributions here. Any questions on that? And I don't know, Adam, if you wanted to add anything. I know that you're deeply involved in this community.
No, I don't have anything to add at this point. I mean, they're reviewing the architectural work that Bill, Mitch, and I have been working on this week and next week as well. So hopefully they do come in, but nothing really more to add.
Okay. Any other questions on the project or where we stand?
Yeah, this is Duncan with first my perennial question on governance, since you did add a bunch of stuff there. I know both the Dave's involved, so I'm sure it's fine stuff. But again, we do got to get the governance model down for it. But my more important question is, so is SCAP V2 being sunsetted, or is it just being the government's not paying a bunch of people to build labs and stuff?
The standard is definitely not being sunsetted.
Okay.
So the standard work is proceeding. So what it was there was a contract with MITRE to build this prototype, and it got built to the point that it's in, and that contract. And this is how things with U.S. federal and MITRE perpetually work, right? So the contract is expired. The folks don't work on it anymore until such a time that there's a new contract, right?
For that work, but the SCAP V2 working group for standards still exists, correct?
Definitely.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, and let's make sure there's absolutely no confusion there, because I don't. Let's have no one call me or email me about that. There's SCAP V2 is full steam ahead. Yeah. Any other questions, comments, closing remarks? All right. Well, I think we're right on time. And we got through our whole agenda. So this is fantastic. So the actions that I took, so the first ballot has to be opened for the co-chair position. That will be happening at end of day Friday, based on Mark and any other nominations that come in between now and then. Second action, I'm going to schedule that call between the folks that were interested in talking more about what to do with JHU and IACD. Any other action items that I'm missing here? All right. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time today. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks.
See you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.